Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm here with Joel Hansen, who is a business development manager with the Skidmore Group, and we're going to be here talking today about social media. Joel is interested in LinkedIn, and that's going to form some of the conversation that we have today. So I think we'll just quickly start off with just give me like a 1-minute summary of where did you come from a work perspective?
For sure. Thanks for having me today, Jarrett. From a work perspective, I grew up in a family of 7 in the Fraser Valley, and when I went to university, I kind of developed a love for social media and how stories can communicate values and really how those stories and communities can provide multiple avenues of creativity to execute within business. And now I'm currently a business development manager with a private equity firm, and a lot of my role is focused on building partnerships and also using social media to really scale how fast a conversation and relationship can be made within that business group. So
that's great.
Yeah, that's kind of the background.
That's fabulous. That's great. That's a great summary. So when you think of social media, now you're what we would call a digital native. You're of the age where you grew up with. It's kind of been around for most of your life, if not all of the life that you kind of remember. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I think the term is Gen Z. Is that kind of what you're referring to? Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So with this being part of your life, how would you define a social network at its most basic level? Mm-hmm. What does a social network mean to you?
Yeah, for sure. I think what I would define as a social network would be kind of a community hub of ideas, peoples, and values that are kind of put together in a community network. And within that network, I think you're able to create as well as respond, share, and kind of redirect content within that community.
Yeah, that's good. I think what's important about what you said, and I love everything that you said, is that you didn't tie social networks to social media. Because social networks are not social media. I mean, social media is a social network, but me talking to my neighbor over the fence, or me going to, maybe the gym that I go to, or my church, or whatever it is, may be a social network. It doesn't have anything to do with kind of the digital world as you described it, which I think is really, really important to understand.
Agreed. And I would say the most powerful social networks are the ones that actually do kind of continue offline, right. If I might add. And I think what's so fascinating and what drew me to LinkedIn is that they've actually built a reputation as what Business Insider called in 2019, they're the most trusted social media network, which I think makes it quite an interesting conversation.
Yeah. You're a LinkedIn influencer.
I would like to say I create content, and sometimes it gets a lot of views, but I'm not a Jeff Bezos in LinkedIn. We'll say that much.
So how does one create the relationships that you have online?
Great question. I think at a core, what resonates with the platform on LinkedIn is really identifying a 1-sentence kind of purpose statement of what you stand for as a person, and then kind of sharing and building two-way dialogues of stories, conversations, and really just case studies that prove and validate that 1-sentence statement of who you are.
Right. That's great. And so your journey on LinkedIn, how did you go from 0 to having influence?
Yeah, it's a great question. I saw another friend that was part of a youth advisory board actually with LinkedIn, and he was out of University of Toronto. And he kind of recommended I toss my name in for the next year. And what LinkedIn does, and some of these other social networks do this as well, they'll create youth advisor boards to really gain closer interaction and kind of feedback from that younger demographic. And I actually was selected, I think in my second or third year at university to be a campus editor for actually the Vancouver region. That's kind of what led me into being mentored by the editors and getting into different conversations around, going for coffee and interviewing people and just getting outside of that comfort zone from what a business class might have you in.
That's great. Can you talk about connectivity? The flows of information that you would experience on maybe a platform like LinkedIn?
Yeah, for sure. I think the most compelling argument kind of for what LinkedIn provides in terms of that connectivity piece is they're really trying to democratize the access to information that really there is to career opportunities across the globe.
What's democratize?
Democratize in simpler forms of word and not trying to get political here is basically, I think, to desynthesize and really unblock the barriers and restrictions to how information and opportunities should flow.
Right.
A quick example might be, before you were only able to get an interview if you had a degree and if your parents were friends with the owner of a company.
Right.
Nowadays, if you're smart and clever enough to build a website that takes a funny spin off the CEO's life and find their email or Instagram messenger, that can just as easy book you an interview with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's great. So in the world of social media, we have influencers and we have people who are not influential, but maybe they think they are. Sometimes we refer to these groups as hubs and pumps. Can you talk a little bit about what does that mean? What is your understanding of those terms and how that might play out just in maybe your daily life?
Yeah, I think where I would shed some light on how LinkedIn really applies this topic is within a weekly capacity, LinkedIn has about 675 million users, across the world that have an account with them. Within a week, there's about 9 billion impressions from those users.
Yeah.
The magic of how undersaturated the platform is the fact that less than 1% of the users post content on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
So there's this really fascinating kind of contradiction between these super users that post and share and comment on a daily basis, and then there's a large amount, probably 90% plus, that have gotten an account because their boss, their parents, or their professor has told them to. And they'll never touch the platform again because they have other means of information. I think ensuring that the people you're building relationships with and the people you're allowing your attention, your time to follow their thoughts, I think it is important to keep a gauge on how much you're listening, if you're in an echo chamber, and what kind of creativity outlet are you actually putting your time to creating content versus just consuming.
Right. That's great. I think that's the lack of saturation is fascinating. Mm-hmm. And I'm part of that stat. I don't ever post anything on LinkedIn.
Well, let's hope that this conversation can change that.
Well, maybe I'll post this conversation on LinkedIn.
I'll give it a share.
I mean, that's really what I should do here, right? That's great. I appreciate that. So when we talk about the connections that we have on a platform like LinkedIn, what are the barriers to activation? How do we get over the things that stand in front of us? Yeah,
I would want to answer that to really unlock that barrier. I think it comes at a grassroots perspective of really understanding who that person is and what their work and personal life looks like. If I was to reach out to a CEO from a hotel company that has over 200,000 followers, I would put odds on that account being run by their PR team, that CEO rarely checking his LinkedIn, and him likely not being on the platform or giving you his time or attention.
Yeah.
So that would be a different relationship to really activate. Opposed to, say, someone like ourselves. We're both Vancouver locals. We have a lot of mutual connections. We've kind of passed similar community groups, and so it's a lot easier for me actually to get a referral from a friend to mention context from our university or educational background and really open up that line of communication where you might not be as busy.
Yeah.
And LinkedIn and social media might actually play a bigger role in your value system.
Yeah.
So I think it comes at an opinion of understanding that person and their professional kind of arena. And then secondly, just conveniently working around them and understanding their goals and objectives to see how is this a relationship I could open up.
Yeah.
And, how do I kind of get resourceful with doing that?
Yeah. That's great. Okay. So when we think about building and scaling a LinkedIn community, can you lay out like some steps or how does one go about doing that? Because I think what's important is that, we think about LinkedIn. I want to build my network as an employee. LinkedIn's good for that. But if I'm in the B2B world, maybe LinkedIn's a great platform for me to be on. How does one build a community for the business they're working for, maybe their own business, rather than just kind of a personal networking?
I would advise a couple things. I believe kind of putting together a one-pager, so to speak, on a Google Doc or a notebook and really documenting, what's your one-sentence purpose statement, why you exist as a person or in that role. The second one would be kind of outline what key objectives you're trying to drive with building this community. Let's be honest, are you building it for, reputation, what the Gen Zers call clout? Is it something that your boss has, kind of asked you to do on behalf of the company, to get more, sales or speaking engagements? I think get really granular with what that goal and objective is. Mm-hmm. And then that third piece would be, start building two-way dialogues with really your tribe and your community leaders that are people you want to learn from, but then also be associated with. Yeah. If you're in, B2B sales for an e-commerce brand and you work at Wayfair or Amazon or Shopify, get really, dialed in on who are the key brands within that industry, within my, region of Canada, the USA, and figure out who those people are and kind of how you can align your objectives with them to really amplify that reach. And then also creating opportunities for community learning and two-way conversation rather than just shouting about every promotion and deal you close.
Yeah, that's great. That's super helpful. Joel, I think that, looking at the things we've just chatted about, it's very clear to get an understanding of how to build a community and the benefits of building community on LinkedIn. Specifically, it's not often in social media strategy class that we really get granular into a specific network, and so this is helpful to understand what's happening on LinkedIn today and how that will impact us in the future. I appreciate your time, and it's been great chatting with you.
Awesome. Thanks again for having me, and looking forward to seeing that LinkedIn post when this is up.
Okay, thanks.